Coming down the hill here to Smoky Hollow, you have a long time serving restaurant, the NVR. Specializes in Italian cuisine, if you will. I'm going to go right to the center of the street where I want you to get a good sense of this subterranean community, as I call it, Smoky Hollow, and how it's situated right off of Wick Avenue, if you will. This is an area that's an old immigrant community, if you will. You had almost every ethnic class of people were represented in this immigrant working class community back in the day. Italians, African American, Polish immigrants, Jewish, Slovak, and on and on and on. You had this section of the community is amply called Smoky Hollow, named after, if you will, nicknamed after smoke and soot and stuff that would come in from the local steel mill, if you will, and also the local railroad lines, if you will, would make its way to this subterranean community, if you will. I'm going to pan around here and let you see some of the streets here, and in case I get some of the streets wrong, you could forgive me. Charge it to my head and on my heart. I'm marching down the street now as I head more into the heart of the community. I'm going to go down the Heritage Park area. I want you to get a good look at the NVR. Over my shoulder here is the Youngstown Public Library of the Mahoney County. And as we come down here, now I'm at the corner of Court Street and Walnut. So back up there, I was at the corner of Walnut and Wood. Hey, how befitting, Walnut and Wood. As I come down here, you can see how some of the inner workings of the Wake Avenue corridor here, with the church represented right behind me there, and as it blends in with the YSU campus, if you will. And of course, there's NVR. Started as a simple restaurant back in the day, and it just kept adding to it, building bocce courts, etc. And it's a working class community restaurant, if you will. Italians go there. Some of everybody goes there, but it is a hangout. I would be remiss in saying that Jewish people are represented in this community too. I forgot that. That's my oversight. Some of the pillars of this community, or some of the prominent people, I would actually say as well, were, let me start with the Warners, the Warner family, with Jack and Sam and Harry and Albert. The Warner brothers came out of this community, if you will. Now, filming around here, you can see some of the areas that are kind of boarded off in the background there. Those open expanses of land represents homes that once stood here. Through the year, YSU bought out a lot of those places, if you will. If you look down there, you'll see student housing off my left shoulder, looking down where the car is coming from. Student housing is down there. Yeah, this property is owned by YSU, so you'll see the YSU police patrolling this area as well. And you see some of the old park that used to be that in one of the old parks. The name escapes me, if you will, what park that represented back in the old days, but you can see that used to be a park. Of course, they got parking areas down here for the NVR restaurant. There's YSU administration building, Jones Hall, you can see right there. As the sun starts to settle in the valley, much like the smoke settled in this community a lot of years ago, where people were out here and part of the workforce, if you will. Integrated, ethnic, immigrant, working class community. Smoky Hollow, it borders the north and east sides, if you will, because from the north side, if you walk down in the direction I'm pointing the camera now, you see the Oak Street Bridge right there. That area right there is nicknamed the Bottom because a lot of African American people stayed there, and they nicknamed it the Bottom over there on the eastern portion, if you will, up underneath the bridge, because it was at the bottom of a bridge. It was underneath a bridge. Now, this subterranean community was very unique in that if you did not live down here, you didn't really frequent and come to this this area too much. You just rode across the bridge, or you walked on Wick Street over there, and you never really paid much attention to these digs, if you will, right here. You can see some of the properties that used to be. I want to cascade a little bit further on down the sidewalk because I want you to get a good idea of how low this community was. See, right there as I'm walking towards the Oak Street Bridge, it gives you a reference of how low we really are. We are really going into a valley depression here for real. Some of the service buildings are down here, YSU style, or that could be owned by NPR. I'm unsure who owns those digs there. If anybody's watching this video, you can leave that down in the comments. Over here, you see some of the houses that represented today back right there over my shoulder. You can see how big the houses were. These were big houses because these houses housed anywhere between 6 to 8 kids, and that was not too uncommon. The Warners, for example, had 11 kids. They had 5 sons, and they had, oh no, I want to spin that around. They had 6 sons and 5 daughters. One of the sons, the youngest son, he died at Rand while he was attending Rand High School. He was in his senior year. He had succumbed to an appendix burst rupturing, if you will. His appendix ruptured, and they weren't able to get him to the doctor in time and all that. And back then, they didn't have antibiotics like they do now. Right now, I'm stepping up on the sidewalk because I want you to see the student housing, if you will, over there. And there's Heritage Park right there. And they have outside venues going on here, entertainment through the summer months, as this is mid-October, I should say, in the city of Youngstown, Ohio. Over the shoulder there, you can see the student housing. That's pretty much showing you how much property that YSU bought out. The NVR was able to remain solo and do their thing. I'm going to get back to some of the prominent people that lived in the Smoky Hollow community. Patrick J. Hungaro, who went on to become mayor of Youngstown, Ohio, serving 14 years in that office before they voted in term limits. He left Youngstown and went and became the township administrator in the township of Liberty, which borders Youngstown to the north. He would go on and do that 20 plus years. So he served as mayor and township administrator collectively for well over 35 years. He started off his young life down here in Smoky Hollow. He went to Rand School with a lot of other prominent students around his age at that time, if you will, the classes, if you will. And some of these people didn't come out of school too far after him, or maybe they came out about the same time or slightly before him. Patrick J. Hungaro, you know his history, being an educator, football coach, and then would go on into public service, if you will. Nathaniel R. Jones, who a federal courthouse is named after him in downtown Youngstown. He was appointed to the federal bench by the Jimmy Carter administration, so he became federal judge. And for that honor and for what he did, his contributions to not only the community, the NAACP, and on and on and on, he has a federal courthouse in downtown Youngstown at Commerce and Wood Street, if you will, or Commerce and Wick, I'm sorry, I always want to say Wood. Commerce and Wick Street. Also, the Wick family owned a lot of this property back in the day. John Wick, to be exact, owned a lot of this property back in the day. I've left the Warners, who went on to film prominence, as you know them, the Warner Brothers. Nathaniel Jones, I covered. Patrick J. Hungaro. Who else do we have? I want to get to all the prominent people that really come out of this area. Robert Pegues. Robert Pegues went on to become the first African-American superintendent for the Youngstown City School District at 36 years of age. He served 8 years, and he went out to Warren, became their superintendent, the first black superintendent of schools as well. So he served 8 here, and he went on to replicate that in Warren, serving another 8 years. So 16 years he served as superintendent of schools between Youngstown and Warren, the city of Warren, Ohio, if you will. Other prominent people I want to mention that came out of this community as well. Okay, I just named 4. I named a relationship with the Wicks owning property, because the Wicks, as the Wick Avenue, Wick Avenue was actually named after George Dennick Wick, but his brother John was a major player in this area too. The Wicks had a lot of children. They had boys and girls, of course, and they all had money. They got their money, made their money in the banking industry, in the real estate industry, if you will, along with moguls like Henry Stambaugh and others. All the prominent families, the Wicks, the DeBells, and all these kind of guys families had deep pockets. They had a lot of money. There was a lot of money to be made. I want to walk to the border there, and I'm going to shoot back this way. Okay, I'm at the intersection or the streets of Harrison and Court now, as I'm going to turn around and show you where I walk from. Not too far, but I wanted to move a little bit further as I talk about some of the people that came out of this community, such as the DeBartolos. Edward J. DeBartolo Jr. came out of this area. His father was a garage maker, made other structures as well. He picked up the family bug. Well, he worked in the family business. The DeBartolos would relocate to the city south side on Judson Street. And also I know Nathaniel R. Jones relocated from Smoky Hollow as well and moved to the south side, because they both came out of my alma mater, South High School, if you will. So I know that to be a fact. A lot of prominent people. I've given you some. I could go on forever. You know, some of these names go way back in history, cascades way back in history. Right now, I'm aiming the camera towards the Heritage Park gazebo, if you will. That's where, I mentioned earlier, they have summer concert series, lawn kind of events for people to come in. I've been to a few of those myself through the years. A lot of these streets are still functioning, as you can see down here. This is Court. And these people are cascading around here, if you will. I want to walk a little further as I talk about a little bit more of the history of Smoky Hollow. I'm going to mention also about the bottom down here. On the bottom, as you can see in the background there beyond this gate, is a church that served the African American community down here. And you see in a couple churches at the top of the hill. One of those older churches have been converted into an eatery and winery, if you will, where you can get beers and wines and things like that. Now, as I cascade more forward back up in here, I'm walking towards the eastern half of the lower, what I call lower terrain community, if you will, the valley community. Getting more towards what they affectionately on this end, the African Americans dubbed this the bottom, if you will. And I'm going to show you another road that kind of comes down off the top side, if you will. See, I'm going to spin around here and let you see what I mean by this place being a depression or a valley depression. And kind of subterranean, I call it. And the street level represents that church to the left up there. That's street level. And then as you see, it's cascading, getting lower and lower, deeper and deeper, so to speak. But here we go. Let me keep walking. I want to show you some of these areas get reclaimed through the years as people died off. The kids didn't want to keep up the homes, so they were one by one condemned and torn down. Some of the properties going back that way were sold to YSU. But on this end, factories had always been in the background. Matter of fact, you can see right off the camera's lens to the left of the backside of the church there. That's where the smoke would have been coming from back in the old days, and how it would cascade up through here. A lot of mornings you come out to almost a foggy condition. Today we call that smog. Smog is a combination of smoke and condensation and stuff like that. See, there's you see right there, that's Oak Street where those cars are crossing right now. To get down in here, as I referred to the bottom, you would come down that street there to the left there, and then you would cascade this way, and then you would come down this street here. And that's was the entryway for the African American communities, if you will, and the gateway back that way with the Jewish and Irish and Poles and Slovakians and all the other nationalities, the working class neighborhood, as I called it. As they worked down here and they went to the mills, they went to their factory jobs. I once came to a funeral at this church here, so I know it all too well. I want to give you the name. I want to be precise, because this church has been here a long time. Way before the 70s, because I remember coming here during the 70s. I'm at Watt and Elk Street. At this point, I'm at Watt and Elk Street. And as you can see, there are people walking right there. That's representative of the Oak Street Bridge, which he's just starting to walk across. And here's the bridge on this side, right forward in front of me right here. I'll give you a shot of this street too, for those that used to live in this community, to let you see what it's looking like these days and what it has become, if you will. Right here, last time I was right down here, I went to one of my nephew's funeral. It was a sad day. We had the repast here. We had the services at one of the funeral homes. I believe that was Black, L.E. Black in Calhoun. Is it Calhoun? Right here, Oak Missionary Baptist Church. I just wanted to get this right and let you know and see. Okay, Pastor Sylvia Jennings is down here now. Wow, I didn't know that. Okay, Oak Missionary Baptist Church. Founded, I think it was founded in the organization came together, I think, in around 36. This church here, this edifice here, was built in 1950, if I believe it came online in 1950. Over here you can see some of the factories now. Looking straight ahead there, that's Andrews Avenue. We're coming up on Andrews Avenue that was named after Chauncey Avenue, who was known as the mentor to the millionaires. He owned a sprawling estate right where Ursuline High School is currently located. Was his mansion, if you will. And he was known as the mentor to the millionaires because he made his money early. He made it fast, and he had a lot of money. He had his money staked in properties and shipping, railroad industries. He just did some of everything. So a lot of people who made that money would come to him for advice. And a lot of those guys, that said birds of a feather flock together. He wasn't bashful about sharing his experiences and stuff like that. So there he is right there, the guy I saw earlier walking across. You got somebody up top walking across as well. If I was to cascade more that way, you get into the area that was called the bottom, a subterranean community as I call it, a land down under, if you will. As I'm preparing to leave the grounds of Oak Missionary Baptist Church, where Pastor Sylvia L. Jennings presides, if you will. I have memories, more profound memories of this area. My mother lived down here in the bottom, and I would come down. She lived on Penn Avenue at first, and then she moved down into the bottom down here, and then she would move up on Hemrock. She was all things the east side, if you will. When she first came to Youngstown from Welsh, West Virginia, with me in tow, I was around 11 months old. She lived on a street off of Shehigh called Rose Street, and she moved from Rose Street, and she eventually made her way to Penn Avenue, and then she would move down here in the bottom. This was a tight-knit community because a lot of people knew each other. They went to church together. They worked in the factories together. They were very, very tight-knit and very protective of their community, if you will. When they would often have people speak negative of the people here. See, this was truly what they call a melting pot, for real. A lot of people grew up in this community, and they were very tight. Could you imagine, if you will, Italian kids playing with Jewish kids, playing with African-American kids, playing with Polish kids? All these kids got along because they didn't know racial barriers, they didn't know race, they didn't know income and all the politics of all that and racism. This was a semi-insulated environment down here until they went off the hill and back into the mainstream, if you will, areas that they had to do that. But this was home for them. Home was a place of comfort and shelter, and that they could not only play along with each other, love on each other, go to school with each other, nod and passing to each other, because they recognized who was from this area. Bar none, they recognized who was from this area. So some of the other buildings, I wish I had reference points to show you the massive amount of homes that were once down here. All these open lots that you see here represent where homes used to stand, if you will. And if I was to go more in the direction where that car just went, I would really be walking all over the community. I didn't want this video to be terribly long and belabor things, But I just wanted to speak on Smoky Hollow. When I did the opening shots, that was the Smoky Hollow Veterans Memorial, if you will, placard, paying tribute to those from Smoky Hollow who died during the war, if you will. Yeah, we're down here. You see cars traverse down here because they know some of these roads are kind of uncouth and unkept. It's kind of like an area that the city forgets about. And there are dirt roads down there. The asphalt, maybe that used to be here, has turned to dirt. And I see the geese have found their way here to Smoky Hollow. Yeah, the old days when smoke would come down here over. Back there we were very industrious, if you will, with the Wick Foundry was over there, steel mill, railroads cut this way and that way. You know, going left to right. You had the Erie, you had the Pennsylvania, you had the New York, and there's one more that escapes me right now, but I know going this way, you had the Pennsylvania, I think it was at the corner of Hemrod and Wilson Avenue area, and then you had the Erie, which was Grand Commerce Street there, and then the New York line was over there where the Greyhound bus station was for a lot of you, right next to B.J. Allen Fireworks for a lot of years. That served as Greyhound bus station, which is now right in downtown Youngstown at WRTA building, if you will. They shared those digs. Sometime you'll come down here and see guys, especially college players, do a pickup game of flag football or football. They're down here playing. It's a really big open expanse there, so they can really what I call work their young bravado and energy and get out there and just strike up a friendly game of touch football, if you will. The park escapes me what that park used to be over there. I would dare say that with this kind of configuration that it may even serve as a baseball field at one time. And way in the background there you can see some of the cars that are driving through this area. But most especially, more of anything, I just wanted to give you some history about this community and some of the prominent people that came out of this area. Later in the video, I'll be conducting an interview with a gentleman by the name of Mr. Jones, who is a man of the cloth. He and I hit it off real good, and we're going to be sitting down talking about some of his experiences growing up in this neighborhood. Himself, his sisters, and his brother Darnell Jones, for example, that heads up the Youngstown United as one. He's did those events through the city. A lot of people that came from down in these digs had a sense of community activism and involvement, service, if you will. And that's what they did. They served the community. They were achievers. Some would call them super achievers or overachievers. But no, they had a community consciousness that would drive them to community service and doing a lot of good things for the community, if you will. I like to say I do a little bit of it. I don't do all of it, but I do a little bit of it myself. I serve my community by documenting a lot of historical places, a lot of historical events and things like that. I just want to get those so that future generations can appreciate, so to speak, the NVR. I think they found their humble beginnings down here in their early 20s or 30s, about around there. And here they are in 2025, October 2025. They are still rooted in this neighborhood. And as you can see, the gray portions of the building, that represent the additions, as I mentioned earlier, that were built on. The tan and burgundy or maroon colored building there represents the original restaurant. And you can see how it just grew and grew and grew. It's not only a place to eat and be entertained with fine music, fine wine, and stuff like that, but this is truly a jewel in our community, NVR, if you will. Serves not only just the Italian community, but it serves a lot of people, if you will, in the community by doing more to just a little good in the neighborhood. They're keeping the stories alive, if you will, and feeding people. You know, Jim Tressel was a regular here when he and his wife Ellen lived in the community serving YSU as YSU's president. Of course, as YSU football coach for a lot of years. Everybody know Mr. Tressel and what he did. But that was one of his hangouts there. Mr. Mike Claret, who I got to know very well, a swell guy. That was one of his hangouts too. A lot of people appreciated him. He worked a lot of different jobs. A lot of people know his son Maurice that went out to Ohio State and played under the Tressel coaching era, if you will. So I'm going to end this video for now, and then you'll see me interviewing Mr. Jones about what it was like to grow up on these streets down here. He mentioned to me what street. I think he said he grew up on Court. Court would be the street I'm walking on right now. As I'm walking, this is one of the few brick streets back in the day. Probably was done by P. Rosberry. He was a major brick contractor, master stonemason, architect, community servant. He did some of everything. And one of the things I admire about P. Rosberry, he made a decree to African Americans right after the end of the Civil War that if you wanted to learn a trade or wanted a job, come to Youngstown, Ohio, and I will teach you how to be a bricklayer. And they came. The bell, if you will, was answered, and a number of African American community members, they would become members of the community, would come here and settle here. Oscar Bogus was one of his proteges, so if you know the history of Mr. Bogus, and a lot of other guys that went on to learn a trade and then branch off and then do their own thing, if you will. And he had his own brick foundry, Mr. P. Rosberry. He built the original, ran high school, etc., etc. He did a lot of good things for the community. So this is where I just wanted to end. I'm gonna give a shot of MVR here, if you will, as I say goodbye to you for now. I'm Joseph Napier Sr. I'm sitting here with Vander Jones, and we're on the north side of Youngstown. He's going to reminisce and tell me the story of what it was like for him to grow up in the community of Smoky Hollow. How was it like growing up in that community, sir?
For me, growing up in the Smoky Hollow area was fantastic. I enjoyed my childhood thoroughly. I have a few things to share about it. Won't keep you long, but it was just, for me, it was great. I said to making sure that it was great. Growing up in Youngstown, before the buildings, the grocery stores, the dry cleaners, before they crumbled, and before the streets fell silent, Smoky Hollow was alive. It was alive. Like a heartbeat pounding, pulsating with life, culture, laughter, and love. They called it the bottom, but to us, it was the top of the world. It was like the top of the world. Every place where there was a porch had a story. Every porch had a story. And most neighbors felt like family. You might not find Smoky Hollow, AKA the bottom, on the map right now, but for me, it was the center of everything I knew and loved. I grew up at 264 Valley Street, 3 houses away from Senior DeBartolo. He lived there prior to my knowing him. Pat Ongaro, also former mayor, was a resident of Smoky Hollow. We played kickball, dodgeball, and tag on Valley Street. Smoky Hollow seemed to me at that time as if it was self-contained. At the corner of Valley Street and Andrews Avenue was Bird Car Wash. It was my brother Bird. He had a car wash. On the opposite corner was Duchess Auto Body. It was on the corner of Audubon and Andrews. Duchess is still in business today. Looking back, Nikki's grocery store was on Adams Street, and Waynio's grocery was on the other end of Walnut, and Bushi groceries on the other end. Back in the early 70s, the freeway expansion on 680, it expanded to Oak Street. It began in the early 70s again, which cut its path straight through Oak Street Park, dividing Oak Street and Scott Street from Walnut Street, which separated us from the rest of the bottom. Back then, the MVR Club was small, much smaller. It is still located on Walnut Street. It was one of the few surviving establishments and had expanded and remains a popular site with good food and much more. Once a house, a good neighbor 3 doors up from me, he just mentioned, bruh, from Valley Street, as a new establishment. I think it's called Hysteria House, pardon me if I mispronounce it. Although I haven't gone in yet, I heard great things and have read great reviews about it. Vince store was located on the opposite side of what was called back then in the day a beer garden, on the corner of Emerald and Audubon, and a dry cleaner on the opposite corner. As a kid growing up, we ate succulent peaches from our peach tree in the backyard on Valley Street. Our neighbors had a cherry tree, and as a matter of fact, the entire neighborhood was packed with various fruit trees, grapevines, you know. As a matter of fact, the entire neighborhood was full of fruit trees and such nature. Over time, they all vanished. Halloween was a much anticipated time of year. Since there were so many homes and houses in the area, we could fill up 3 A&P grocery bags full of candy. On Sunday mornings, my 2 sisters and one of my younger brothers at the time, we would walk the street at Oak Baptist Church, 320 Elk in Smoky Hollow. At times, I wouldn't even put the money in the church offering plate. I would hold on to it and save it and walk up to Walnut Corner store and get candy after church. We played a game sometimes sitting on our front porch, leading. Our front porch had steps, 2 layers of steps. We would sit on the steps and we can view Andrews Avenue from where we sat. And we would sit there, we used to play this game called My Car. And we would name the cars as they passed by on the street. It was just a short distance away. At Harrison Field, we were often there playing basketball. It was old dusty court. And we tossed ringers on the side of a red brick building that's still standing there today. Back then, whenever individuals got into a fight, we would gather around and watch as punches were thrown. But unlike today, the following day was a new day. What I mean is that no grudges were held. No one ran home to get a gun. Things have surely changed, but Youngstown is still a vibrant city. We still got much to be proud of here. I had just reopened a project I shelved about a year ago. I intended on reconstructing Valley Street and Smoky Hollow for a photo album. When I began the project, just seemingly some of the photo albums that I wanted to put the house together, put the neighborhood together. I discovered doing my research, it feels so good, bro, to see houses that are not there anymore. But as I begin to picture them in the archives and see them, it had a profound effect on me. So I know I'm gonna have to continue to finish this project. So to see Smoky Hollow, AKA the bottom, restored would be fantastic. To close, the few streets that are left may be quiet now, but the spirit of the bottom still lives in every memory, every story, and perhaps every heartbeat that once called it home. Although most of the homes are gone and the laughter has faded. But the memories, they're permanent residents in the bottom. Smoky Hollow, AKA the bottom, may have vanished from the map, but it will never vanish from my heart. That's what I had to share with you today, my brother.
Hey Vander, as we're prepared to say goodbye, give me some closing remarks on what your community was as you were growing up and what you experienced in that culture.
Yes, one thing I really has stuck with me, it's etched in my DNA, is growing up, the tightness, the close-knitness of the close community that I was in. As I said, Youngstown, Smoky Hollow, the bottom was like a melting pot. But what really sticks out in my mind most is how close-knit the families were that lived on Valley Street. Like I said, every porch shared a story. I would go over to the Shelton's house and we would sit on their porch and play and laugh and joke. I remember I was always a jokester, prankster at a young age, and how I remember back in the days, if you remember this program called The Money Movie. The Money Movie, it came on, and I went to Mother Shelton, I called her, disguised my voice, and act like I was Rich Morgan of the Money Movie. I see her, she put the phone down, ran, or whatever she was doing down, and ran to pick up the phone. You know, we laughed so hard when she realized it was me. I remember also playing football and playing basketball. And one particular incident that occurred that stays in my mind, we were playing kickball this day, and someone kicked the ball, and it went over to Mr. JC's house, and I could hear him moaning and groaning. The car had fell on him, on his chest. And one of the ladies, the neighborhoods, Miss Lorraine, she picked that back into the car by herself. You know how adrenaline flows in the heat of the moment. She picked it up and we were able to drag Mr. JC out from under the car. It's stuff like that where we were caring, close-knit, devoted to one another. If my Miss Minnie seen me do something, she would tell my mother, and vice versa. We had a lot of fun, close-knit things. And as I mentioned, we were just that close. I remember playing basketball relentlessly every day at Harrison Field with the dirt court. You know, we would play every day, sundown and sunup. But you know, the things that get me today, and when I reflect back on then and now, what really touches me and what I think about is the people. Just the way people, our people, black people, were united, where we fellowship, broke bread with each other. We would sit out, stay up late at night and just talk and share. Even though we need to lock our doors today, back then, we didn't even consider thinking about that type of security. That's how close our community was. And with that, brother, I appreciate the time you shared with me about Smoky Hollow. As I said, the bottom. To many, it may have just been another place or another community. But the bottom to us was the top of the world.